Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to Fast and Natural Solutions to Solve Occasional Heartburn. I'm Maggie Jacqua. I'm the Content Director of Whole Foods Magazine, and I'm honored to be your moderator for today's webinar, which is brought to us by Enzymedica. Thank you all for joining us. So, as you may be aware, occasional heartburn is actually one of the most common digestive complaints in the United States now. It impacts tens of millions of Americans, and consumers often turn to over-the-counter medications for relief. But science has us wondering, is that really the best idea long term? We're going to get an answer to that question and to many more questions, thanks to Julia Craven. She is the VP of Education for Enzymedica, and she's here to shine a light on the issue and to talk about some effective options for resolving occasional heartburn quickly and safely with time-tested natural options. At the end of today's presentation, Julia will be answering your questions, and I see some are already coming into the chat. So glad you guys are here and ready to get going. Please put your questions into the Q&A box. You can post them throughout the webinar as Julia is speaking. And at the end of her talk, I'll come back on and we'll work through all your questions. If you have any technical issues or any other comments, you can post those in the chat, and our team behind the scenes is here to assist you. I also want to let you know one important disclaimer. This is going to be a scientific and technical presentation for our business audience. The information in this presentation is intended for educational and scientific purposes only. It is not intended as medical or nutritional advice for the treatment or prevention of disease. As always, for medical advice, consult your personal healthcare practitioner. Okay, so we're going to cover a lot of ground in this talk. Julie has some great charts. The information will be available on demand after the talk. So if you miss anything, you'll be able to take another gander through it after. And please let your colleagues who weren't able to join us live know that it'll be available on demand as well, so that they can access the information. And now we're ready to dive in. So Julia, welcome. And I will turn the stage over to you. Julia's going to get her slides ready for us, and then she'll take it away.
Really appreciate all of your participation and being here today to learn about this really important issue of what's going on with people with this occasional heartburn. As Maggie mentioned earlier, it is just rising all of the time in the US. And so it's of great concern to me. It's of great concern to Enzymedica as well. Again, my name is Julia Craven. I'm the Vice President of Education for Enzymedica. I've been working with natural products and studying them since 1998. I actually started studying them when I was a little kid, and I would break into the encyclopedia and look up herbs. But I've been with Enzymedica and studying enzymes specifically since 2007, and I've come to be known as the holistic enzymologist. And you know what? That's because not a lot of people are talking about enzymes outside of just sort of some normal run-of-the-mill digestive issues. But enzymes can do so much more, and I'm extremely passionate about that. I'm also an expert in herbal medicine. I'm passionate about the gut-brain connection. That is one thing that I really study very closely. And of course, food intolerances. You can't really be looking at natural health right now without understanding food intolerances and dietary interventions. Okay, here's the deal. I'm not a gastroenterologist. I am not a doctor. I am a person who has been studying natural medicine for over 30 years and who has watched what has happened with digestive health in America change and grow, especially over the last 20 years. And so this is a very important topic to me that I've spent years and years studying. But I also do, while I'm not a gastroenterologist, I actually end up training gastroenterologists because there just isn't enough information about natural interventions out there. I really believe in teaching a balanced approach between complementary and allopathic modalities. There's a time and a place for any kind of helpful intervention. So sometimes that is going to be allopathic and sometimes that is going to be natural. It's really about finding the best solution for the time that has the least impact on the body that's going to be the most effective. Another thing I want to say is that today we're going to talk about the difference between occasional heartburn and frequent heartburn. Those are two very different things, and I'll outline that as we're going along. But occasional heartburn is that kind of heartburn that is usually linked to those lifestyle issues. So we're going to talk about what we would use for each kind of situation and the benefits and some of the drawbacks as well. Again, this is brought to you by Enzymedica, and Enzymedica is a beautiful company that focuses on digestive health. Digestive happiness is what we mean to do in the world. and what we want to bring to people. And we've done this since 1998 with high quality products that work. It's the reason that we have been the #1 seller digestive enzyme for over 20 years in a row in the natural products industry, without fail. And then we are also passionately involved with our environment and with the people that we work for, as in the people that we want to help and the people that we work with inside of our company. We call it our People and Planet mission. And a big part of that People and Planet mission is helping people with their digestive health. Think about it. If you don't feel good in your digestion, oftentimes it means you're not really feeling good in your life. So food isn't just fuel. Food is about family. It's about community. It's about identity. And when we nourish all those things, when we nourish those things, we all eat well. That's a quote from Michael Pollan. This is not just about a little bit of gas and bloating, some irregularity, some maybe constipation, occasional heartburn. Helping digestive health is about helping your entire life, because if your digestion doesn't feel good, your entire life is not going to go right. It affects everything in your body. We're going to learn a lot about that today. So again, getting back to our topic today, the incidence of heartburn globally, there's been an increase of 77%. 77% between 1990 and 2019. That is a huge increase. And what's really interesting to me about that increase too, is that we have more modalities to handle it, more medications to handle it. And yet this number is skyrocketing. It's also no surprise that the US is consistently in the top 3 for highest prevalence. South America has high prevalence, China, as well as India. But the US is always up there in the top 3. Also, US research consistently reports that women are more prone than men. This is also interesting because women are also the ones who are more willing to make those dietary interventions, and they go to their doctor. They do a lot more to try and prevent it, where the men, it looks like, don't do quite as much, and yet the women have more prevalence. And in the US, this is important, 45% of people are turning to these over-the-counter medications. Why? Because that's what we know. That's what most people know. Huge number, 45% of people are turning to over-the-counter medications. And so here's some quick facts. 30% of Americans, up to 30% of Americans, suffer from heartburn 1 time a week, and up to 10% are having heartburn every day. 40% of those people say it impacts sleep. We all know how important sleep is to total health, to mind-body health. Now, these allopathic over-the-counter treatments are the most widely used solution, but there are healthy, scientifically validated solutions that exist. And in order to understand this whole category and to understand how different products work, first we have to understand what's actually going on in the body. So what does healthy function look like? And we're going to look at the left side of the page here. So we have something called the lower esophageal sphincter, also known as the LES, because it's a lot easier to say. And that lower esophageal sphincter is there to, at the bottom of the esophagus, it opens to allow food to pass through, and then it closes, and that way it's keeping stomach contents, including stomach acid, where it belongs, which is in the stomach and not coming up into the esophagus. So we really want to make sure that that lower esophageal sphincter has healthy tone and that it's working properly. Now, when the LES has lost tone, it does not open and close properly. Specifically, it doesn't close properly, usually. And what's happening then, when that LES doesn't close, then we have stomach acid that's coming up into the esophagus. And that's where we get those really uncomfortable feelings, those burning feelings in our chest, which can be so troublesome. So this is really kind of the whole deal here, is this lower esophageal sphincter not working properly. So what are some of the things that can trigger it not working properly? A big one, carrying extra weight in the midsection a lot of times can be a problem, because what's happening is the stomach is pushing up on the stomach acid. It's hitting that LES, and the LES starts to lose tone. It starts to degrade over time. So when we think about how important this is, it's like 42% of Americans at this day are obese. That number is just getting greater and greater. So that's a big one right there. Cigarette smoking can damage and relax the LES. certain medications can relax the LES. There are a lot more than I've shown here. So if you are on a medication and you're having this issue, it's worthwhile to talk to your pharmacist or even take a quick look online if maybe that medication might be the cause of your issues. Obviously, we all know this consistent overindulgence in greasy and high-fat foods. They actually relax the LES. And that can even happen with healthy foods. It's just a lot less prevalent, excuse me. We know spicy foods, onions, garlic, citruses, and tomatoes, they can all have an effect on having too much stomach acid as well. And interestingly, peppermint is one of those ones that it can either hinder or it can help. So sometimes you see remedies that are actually using peppermint and they can really help people, but sometimes peppermint will give people that occasional heartburn. Alcohol overuse, especially at night, can relax the LES. Remember, we've got that correlation between sleep and these issues. And then chocolate and coffee both have chemicals in them that relax the LES, and then caffeine can really stimulate gastric secretions. And then even healthy things, certain exercises can really relax the LES. It's thought that all exercise does in general, but especially those exercises that go up and down a lot. So basketball and yoga, especially people who are at the gym, they're doing bench presses, they're getting a lot of pressure on the LES, and swimmers because they're constantly swallowing all this water. So here are some common triggers, and they are mostly lifestyle things. These are the things that we can mostly do something about. So here's something that maybe people don't know. There's a gluten and dairy connection with occasional heartburn. So food intolerances, again, whenever something is going on in the digestive system, we really have to take a closer look and wonder if it's food intolerances. And gluten is one that not a lot of people know. It's estimated that 30% of newly diagnosed individuals with celiac also suffer from heartburn. And it's been shown that a gluten-free diet has been an effective solution for even the non-celiac individuals. So say you're not celiac, but you have non-celiac gluten intolerance, a gluten-free diet can often be the solve to that acid discomfort. So obviously, if you're a celiac, the gluten is completely out of your diet. But for people like myself who just have a sensitivity, I never knew that that was actually a trigger for some of the feelings that I was experiencing. Dairy is another, a lot of people know about this trigger, and it is certainly because there's generally a deficiency in certain enzymes, namely the enzyme lactase and protease. And what happens is that some people will mistakenly use dairy as a soothing agent that does temporarily kind of coat the stomach and help to calm that burning sensation and that discomfort. But the problem is that our body rebounds and it says, oh my gosh, now I have to digest this. I don't have the capacity to digest this. What does our body do when it doesn't have enough enzymes to break something down? It creates more acid. And so that is the problem with utilizing dairy, is that not only may it be an intolerance, but you're actually creating more acid when you're consuming dairy for some soothing effect. So quick review of the allopathic solutions. They fall into two main camps. Now, when we're thinking about allopathic solutions, we're more thinking about that class called frequent heartburn. So people who are suffering more frequently. Antacids. Antacids have been around for a long time. There are even antacid types of products that are in the natural products industry, and they simply work by neutralizing stomach acid. They usually consist of calcium, magnesium, mineral salts. The benefit is that they're okay for short-term use. They're easy to take. It's kind of that occasional, I'm gonna pop an antacid and it's gonna be okay. You can go on and off of them. You can use them as needed. So that's the benefit of them. Here's the drawback. When taken over a long period of time, they induce acid rebound. So what's happening is that we've neutralized stomach acid for so long that the body, in its infinite wisdom, says, hey, wait a second, I need more stomach acid. And so it starts to create more. So you have to start to take more antacids. And so you start to create more. And you can see how then it becomes that people become almost hooked on these antacids, and it becomes very hard to get off of them. My dad was one of them. He always had a pocket full of Tums. And now I know that, he always had to have a pocket full of Tums because he was in that rebound effect. And over a long period of time, these can cause mineral absorption issues or mineral excess in the blood. So antacids, while used properly, are not such a bad thing. Again, we don't want to use them over a long period of time. And then there is the other class called H2 blockers or PPIs, and these work by suppressing production of stomach acid. These are synthetic compounds, and both were originally prescription only. So their benefit, they are extremely effective for lowering acid production in the stomach. And this is necessary sometimes. This is needed when we're in an emergency type situation where, say, there is ulceration and we need to stop stomach acid from being overproduced, or we're having really extreme cases of heartburn. There are times and places, like I said earlier, there's a time and a place for everything. So the benefit is that they are extremely effective. And sometimes after you stop taking them, then you can kind of get on the path to natural and figuring out what it is that's actually causing these issues and using some natural solutions as well as dietary interventions. So here's the drawback. The indicated use is 14 days. That is what is on the packaging. Standard physician procedure is to maybe 12 to 14 weeks in a more extreme situation. Again, using that situation of ulceration, it may take some time for those stomach cells to start to regenerate, and so it makes sense to use it for a longer period of time. But that's it. Remember, on the packaging, it says for no more than 14 days. It says for no more than 14 days during a 4-month period. Okay, you're not supposed to take these for a long period of time, and the manufacturers clearly say that. But they have become over-the-counter medications. They are extremely overused. And why? Because they work. And people don't know any better that there may be some negative side effects if they are taken for a long period of time. So again, I want to repeat that these do have benefit. They work really quickly. There is a time and a place for them, but the drawback is that people are using them for an excessive period of time. So I want to look at the challenges when this happens. Again, the number one challenge, I want to state it clearly, it's that they are not taken as directed. They are taken for too long of a period of time. The biggest issue is the disruption of stomach acid. So whether we're neutralizing stomach acid or we're suppressing stomach acid, both of them are disruptions of stomach acid. And stomach acid has gotten a really, really bad rap, but it's actually a very good thing because it's responsible for the preliminary breakdown of food. Stomach acid gastric secretions are really rich in pepsin, which is a protease to break down protein, and lipase to help to break down fats. Two pretty tough things to break down. We need stomach acid and our enzymes to do that. Here's something not a lot of people think about. I think of stomach acid as part of our immune system because that acid is the first chance for those destruction of invaders. That dissolution in a very acidic environment helps to break down and protect us from those pathogenic invaders that we have swallowed or that have come into our digestive system. All right. This is really, really important because now we're starting to open the doors to what can happen in immune health, especially, and all the signaling that happens with the immune system. So suppression is linked to problems in the microbiome. We're going to cover that in a few slides. So we do not want to suppress or neutralize stomach acid. We want to keep it working optimally. Another thing that's very important to stomach acid is it can help to make our nutrients more bioavailable. Again, when we neutralize or suppress stomach acid, we're really suppressing our body's ability to digest food in general and therefore glean the nutrients out of the food. So one of the big nutrient deficiencies that can happen from suppressing stomach acid over a long period of time is magnesium. And we all know we're all a little deficient in magnesium anyway. There's a lot of information out there about magnesium, how we don't have enough of it, and all the wonderful things that magnesium can do. What I want to bring to your attention is this was posted as a drug safety communication on the FDA website in 2011. You can go and find it now. It's still up there. So I'm just going to read the safety announcement. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration is informing the public that prescription proton pump inhibitor drugs may cause low serum magnesium levels, also known as hypomagnesemia. if taken for prolonged periods of time, in most cases longer than 1 year. When I dug into this a little bit more, what I found was interesting is that individuals who took magnesium at the same time as taking this class of medications actually were not able to correct the hypomagnesemia. The only thing that worked to correct it is getting off of the medication. And lo and behold, if you're off of it for a couple of months, your serum magnesium levels can start to come up to normal. So we know what low magnesium is associated with: bone health, muscle health, cardiovascular health, neurological health, anxiety, sleep, depression, and especially long-term cognitive health. So this is something that is so proven that the FDA was willing to put it up on their website in 2011 and keep it here. When taken inappropriately for over a year period of time, low serum magnesium, magnesium deficiency. This is a big deal and has far, far reaching effects. One thing I want to cover that I forgot is that almost every time I speak at a lecture, I do some public speaking, I have at least one person come up to me and say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so scared. I've been on these drugs for 10 years. I had no idea. Oh my gosh." And first thing I want to say is, if you're listening to this right now, you're not alone in that. You didn't know. This is a no shame zone. What we know is to go to the drugstore and pick up those prescriptions. Your doctor told you to get that medication. This is an opportunity for us to learn more and change. And if you are interested in changing, it is absolutely possible. You can bring these levels back up to normal. Another nutrient deficiency that's very, very well known is a B12 deficiency. Huge population data studies have shown that taking acid blockers for more than 2 years can cause B12 deficiency. Now, this is not unusual. I've talked to people that have been on these drugs for 15 years, 25 years. I just worked with a woman who had been on them for 16 years, didn't know anything the wiser, didn't even really need them anymore. It was just that she still had a prescription for them. So massive B12 deficiency. Low gastric secretions can impair that bioavailability of B12. And then the second piece is that if we look at food sources, we're not getting a ton of B12 in our diets anyway, especially for folks that are on a more plant-focused diet. So animal organs, sardines, oysters, clams, certain kinds of cheeses, eggs and chickens still do have a little, beet greens, but we're just not getting a ton of B12 in our diet in the first place, especially if you're eating a standard American diet or you're more plant-focused. This is why so many people supplement with B12. We know B12 deficiency can cause neurological issues, numbness, tingling, issues with balance, coordination, even when it gets really bad, vision loss. Physical issues, that feeling of weakness and just being tired. I know when I've been B12 deficient, it's just like, I'm just kind of tired all the time. But also diarrhea, it can cause issues in the GI, weight loss, appetite problems, heart palpitations, and that feeling of shortness of breath with heart palpitations. And then cognitive, the one that I'm super interested in, we're going to talk about quite a bit today, that difficulty focusing, memory loss, anxiety, mild depression, that feeling of just being kind of confused, and even if it's over a long term in life, leading eventually to dementia. So again, because we don't have enough stomach acid, or that stomach acid has been altered, we're unable to utilize the B12 that is naturally occurring in our foods. What is helpful to know is that if you do need to be on a long-term acid suppressant because there is a medical reason, and there are a few of them, then actually B12 supplementation does help in this instance. So if you're on these medications, taking a B12 supplement, preferably a methylcobalamin form, is going to be helpful for you. Now here's the fun part, the gut-brain axis, one body, two brains. And this is happening through something called the enteric nervous system. So the enteric nervous system is a nervous system that is embedded, literally embedded through the entirety of the digestive tract. And then the communication out of that enteric nervous system happens via the vagus nerve and the spinal cord. But in that enteric nervous system, also known as the ENS, it's sensing and it's reacting to its ecosystem every single day, every time you eat, every time you have any kind of alteration to your gut microbiota. the ENS is sensing and reacting to it. And these cues get translated to chemical cues and neuronal impulses that go through the body, again, through the brain, up to the brain. Now, the vagus nerve, which is the big communication system in our body, is the longest nerve system in our body. And there's a picture of it here on the left. You can see all of these nerve endings that are in the digestive system, that are connecting through the digestive system, come up through the heart and the lungs, and then eventually into the brain. We've known for a long time that the vagus nerve and the brain have a communication system between them, right? That it was thought to be bidirectional. But now we know that most of the communication that's happening is actually going from the gut up to the brain, up to 90% of the communication that's happening. This really, really helps us to understand some of the things that are happening when we have the cognitive feeling of stress and anxiety, how it can actually be something that has started in our gut. So there is a huge relationship between the gut and the brain, and it touches every single part of our lives. If we think about everything that's created in the gut and that's signaling to the brain, it really is so much of the lens of how we see the world. Let's look a little deeper at stomach acid and the gut-brain axis. So long-term alteration of stomach acid can lead to changes in the gut microbiota. This can impact cognitive health. This is because we don't have that microbiota is involved in that signaling between the gut and the brain. And here's how. The microbial metabolites, which is what is created from the microbiota, produce something called short-chain fatty acids. These short-chain fatty acids cross the blood-brain barrier and can influence brain function and behavior. They are very, very neuroprotective for the brain. We need to have these short-chain fatty acids. We know how much the brain is made of fats. And these short-chain fatty acids, butyrates, etc., are actually created in our gut. The other thing that's created in our gut is a lot of neurotransmitters, especially serotonin, GABA, dopamine, and these play critical roles in mood regulation and cognitive health. Also, norepinephrine is another one. But if we think about it, like, okay, we're all thinking about neurotransmitters and our mental health. Most of them are derived in our gut. And so if our gut is a mess, if our acid suppression happens for so long that we're not breaking down our food, we're not breaking down pathogenic bacteria, and it's having an impact on our microbiome later on, we're having an impact on our neurotransmitters. This is really, really important when we think about long-term gut-brain health. And then something called neuroimmunoendocrine regulation, big long word. But it's how the gut microbes interact with the immune system and impact healthy inflammation signaling throughout the body. This disruption and regulation has been implicated in long-term cognitive neurodegenerative disease. So long-term neurological stress that's actually beginning in the gut can actually be because of acid suppression over a long period of time. Again, over a long period of time when taken inappropriately. So this has been in the news a lot. This correlation between proton pump inhibitors, especially H2 blockers have been studied a little bit less, but proton pump inhibitors especially, and long-term effects for cognitive health. Here's what we know. More research needs to be done. I'm just going to say that straight up. There is research that's very, very compelling. We've seen enormous population data studies over long periods of time, 15-year period studies with 75,000 individuals. This is no small sample size that say, you know, there's a really meaningful correlation here. And then we've seen other studies that don't find that same information. So on the safe side, we need to know a lot more about this, but we do know that there's something going on. And if you're a person like myself who has had dementia in the family, I'm going to be really judicious if I do end up ever taking these medications. We also know the risk of nutrient deficiencies. This we know for sure, magnesium and B12. And we also know for sure that gut microbiota can be very negatively impacted. Neurotransmitter production, those metabolites that are caused in or that are formed in our microbiome, and that modulation that's happening. Here's another big piece of research. It also suggests that long-term acid suppression may negatively impact the enzymes that are responsible for the regulation and the dissolving the enzymatic activity of beta amyloid. And we all know the correlation between amyloids and long-term cognitive issues, dementia and Alzheimer's. Again, I'm going to say a lot more research needs to be done, but it points us to that if we are in a situation where we are having frequent heartburn and we are going to the store and just picking up these OTC medications, that there probably needs to be another way. There needs to be another look, and to use these things very, very judiciously and as directed, not over a long period of time. All right, so that's covering that. Let's talk about the benefits of some of the natural alternatives. And these are ones that we are using that really do help to address lifestyle issues. Again, going to go back to the same slide. Stomach acid is a good thing. We want to keep it in production. We want to just simply keep it where it belongs, which is in the lower stomach, not splashing up into that lower esophageal sphincter. So I call it the life raft for occasional heartburn. And this is alginate, also known as alginic acid, and is derived from brown seaweed, and it has like a viscous gel texture. If you've ever touched seaweed before, you're probably really familiar with what is that gel texture like. It's like that. So this substance was launched in 1964 in the EU and is still the #1 remedy in the EU, and it was launched under the brand name Gaviscon. I love this because this means that we have incredible population safety data. We have incredible proof that it's effective. It's just been studied since the 60s, and for some reason, it hasn't quite taken hold in America yet. There is American Gaviscon, but it is different than the EU. It's a different, on the packaging at least, it looks like a very different formulation. And of course, it has all the colorings and other kinds of flavorings that we would want to avoid anyway. But it is very impressive in the science that is behind it. So here's how it works. In the presence of water and stomach acid, alginate forms what we call a gel-like raft. So it expands, it holds 200 to 300 times its weight in water, and it expands on top of the acid pocket of the stomach. And what this means is that it's holding the stomach acid where it belongs. There's a picture on the left. So we have the stomach acid, then we have the alginate raft, and what that raft is doing is preventing the stomach acid from coming up into the esophagus. That lower esophageal sphincter stays closed. Nothing is coming up into the esophagus. We don't experience that uncomfortable burning feeling. This is wonderful. It does not suppress stomach acid. It does not neutralize stomach acid. It's simply keeping stomach acid where it belongs. So then we get all of those positive downstream effects of stomach acid, better nutrient bioavailability, healthier microbiome. We've gone through this. So when the other positive about this is that when the gastric acid is unable to reach the LES, if the LES has had damage, cellular degradation because of years and years and years of acid hitting it, the LES can start to naturally heal on its own. So it's just giving the body to have this opportunity to naturally heal on its own. The other thing that I want to mention about alginate, it's actually beneficial for the rest of your digestive system. It can help to pull out some toxins. It has been used in pulling out heavy metals. And also, remember, it's got that viscous gel-like texture, which means that it's going to support that mucilaginous layer that goes all the way through our digestive system, which is where a lot of our microbiome lives. So healthy, proven, safe for years and years and years all around. Here's some more proof. This is a meta-analysis of 132 studies that were compiled and came up with certain statements. So I'm just going to read it. Compared with antacids, alginate-based formulations are more effective in relieving reflux symptoms, including heartburn, vomiting, and belching, with a longer duration. More effective. Alginate-based formulations are also non-inferior to omeprazole in achieving a heartburn-free period in patients with moderate heartburn, omeprazole being the class of medications called PPIs. So 132 studies put all together came out with these results that alginate-based formulations are highly, highly effective, even in comparison to some of those acid-blocking medications. And so what's the product? What are we going to do about it? This is Enzymedica's Heartburn Soothe product. We are, as far as I know, the first alginate-based formula that is really using a therapeutic dose of alginate. We are using the 500 milligrams, which is the same as the dosage in the EU. Here's what's cool about it. It works in, some say seconds, I say in 5 minutes. Usually I see it in 2 to 5 minutes start to work, and it can last for up to 4 hours. And sometimes, then the heartburn itself is already resolved. I love this because in the natural products industry, we haven't had a lot that really works fast for this issue. And if someone is suffering and dealing with this right now, they are going to be more apt to run and take a Tums and do that over and over and over again versus wait the time that it might take the body to normally modulate that acid production. We finally have something that works fast, that's effective, that's scientifically proven, and that's totally safe for not only sustaining your good acid production, but also for the microbiome. So it again supports total GI health, and it also includes something called prickly pear extract, which helps with stomach cell regeneration. Here's the beautiful part, and I didn't cover this well enough when I was talking about antacids and the acid blocking medications, is that rebound effect. When you take those classes of medications over a period of time, when you stop taking them, the body can often have what's called a rebound effect. And that's an overproduction of stomach acid really, really quickly, which immediately leads to very uncomfortable symptoms. And this is why people say, I try to get off these medications, but I can't. I'm in so much discomfort. And I guess I'm just going to have to be on them. And that is not the case. There are ways to get off of them. But when we're working with these natural items, these are not PPIs, you are not going to have that effect. There is no rebound effect. You can take them as needed. And typically you take them after a meal that is going to be irritating, but I have many, many times given them to people in the throes of having a negative reaction to food. And I can see it start to calm down within between 2 to 5 minutes. And they're yummy. They taste really good. So they come in a chewable, and they also come in a shot. The shot does work a little bit more quickly, but they are both equally as effective. I actually prefer the chewables because sometimes you take two, especially if you're in the middle of having a reaction. So especially if you're having in the middle of a reaction, you might need to take three instead of just the two. But if you are having a situation where you need help right now, this is the product for you. Let's talk about stress and stomach acid. When we have the fight or flight response, stress triggers more acid production and also a contraction of the stomach. So when you get more acid and that contraction, what are you going to get? You're going to get stomach acid coming up into the esophagus. The other thing that can happen with stress is that it can impact gastric motility. It can alter that gastric motility because in fight or flight, our gastric motility slows down. So now we have more stomach acid, we have a contracted stomach, and it doesn't want to empty. It's slowed down. What's going to happen? It's going to splash up. So that's called delayed gastric emptying. And this can be a trigger for stress. A trigger for occasional heartburn. Many, many people talk about this. And one remedy that I have seen work beautifully over the years is this product called Acid Soothe. Acid Soothe was Enzymedica's third product ever made. I think it came out in 2000. So it has stood the test of time, been a winner of many, many awards over the years. And I bring up Acid Soothe in correlation with stress because Acid Soothe is kind of your more not so urgent need. And a lot of times I see it working really well for people who are like, I just get that little something when I get stressed. So the way Acid Soothe works is that, first of all, it has this protease-free digestive enzyme blend. Enzymes are going to help to break down the food so that we're not having so much acid needing to be secreted to break down the food. Why is it protease free? Because in the incidence that there may be some ulceration, whether that be stomach or duodenal, what protease enzymes are going to do is they're going to go in and help to break down that damaged tissue. Literally, it's helping to clean it up. It's a good thing. It just may feel like discomfort. So we took the protease out of this digestive enzyme blend. Can you take a gentle protease still? If you can tolerate, absolutely. You could take a Digest Basic or a Digest Complete, no problem. But just for the purposes solely of this formula, the protease was left out. It also has this really protective herbal blend, namely marshmallow root, which I call an herbal band-aid. It's mucilaginous. It really kind of helps to go in and coat and soothe so that those gastric cells, not only are they soothed at the time, but they also have that opportunity to regenerate because of that mucilaginous coating that's protecting them from the acid. And then very importantly, zinc carnosine, which has been studied in excess for the healthy integrity of gastric cells. So zinc carnosine is one of those things that's consistently used when there needs to be healthy regeneration of gastric cells. And if you think about it, for somebody who has had issues from long-term stress and they're really suffering from that occasional heartburn, we may have issues of integrity with our gastric cells not functioning as they should. So two products there, they actually can be used at the same time, but I really think of Heartburn Soothe as that urgent, I need something right now, and Acid Soothe is I just have some problems occasionally, or I'm looking to help to rebuild my gastric integrity. Something not a lot of people talk about is low stomach acid and heartburn. So what are some of the signs? How do you know? How do you know if it's low or if it's high? Well, some of the telltale signs that you can tell at home are abdominal bloating, extreme abdominal bloating and burping, usually within 30 minutes of the meal, sometimes within 5 minutes. Like it happens fast and it's extreme. Obviously, occasional heartburn, gas, nausea is a really, really big one. Feeling just like there's food just sitting in the stomach. Things just are not moving. Difficulty digesting protein. People say, I just don't digest it well, or they're actually having symptomologies of not being able to get enough protein in their diet. Dysbiosis, again, that word for not enough stomach acid, which is creating a problem later on in the microbiome. We're not killing the bacteria, which can lead to bacterial imbalance like SIBO, SIFO, Candida, etc. And then at times, long-term acid suppressant drug use, because as much as sometimes it happens that there's a rebound effect, the other thing that happens is that the body kind of forgets how to produce stomach acid. It needs a little jump start. How does it work? When you don't have enough stomach acid, the signaling to the LES to close doesn't happen. We need stomach acid to create that signaling for the LES to close. When the LES doesn't close, no matter if you just have a little stomach acid, it is going to splash up into the lower esophageal sphincter and the esophagus, and you're going to have that uncomfortable sensation. So it's interesting. It's a signaling issue. We need enough stomach acid in order to be able to send that signal. So what do we do if we're in this situation? Betaine HCl. Betaine has been out on the market for a very, very long time. And what it can do is it can help to raise the stomach acid in your stomach. Most betaine supplements also contain something called pepsin, which is derived from pork. It's a porcine-derived pepsin. And again, that pepsin is a protein digesting enzyme. So only Enzymedica makes a fast-acting betaine HCl, which does not use pepsin. We use a vegan protease blend that acts just like pepsin. It also contains something called Mucosave, and that's a patented formula of olive leaf and again, prickly pear extract that helps to soothe mucosal membrane tissues. Why is that? Over and over again, if you read online, people who start to take betaine, sometimes they will have some discomfort. Now, I have never seen that with our formula, and I think it's because we don't use that pepsin, but very often people will take betaine because they have low stomach acid, but it makes them feel uncomfortable in other ways. There can be some cramping and other issues. That Mucosave is there just to help to support and protect that gastric tissue. They're 300 milligrams for 2 capsules, and you simply take them with meals. Can you take them with digestive enzymes? Absolutely, you totally can. So this is a really unique formula in that it's both helping to acidify the stomach and in a vegan way, but it's also helping to protect those mucous membranes in the stomach and that gastric tissue. And another one that is beautiful for protection of gastric tissue is licorice root. I call it the original digestive remedy because it's been used in traditional medicine all over the world as a core digestive helper. And historically, it was consumed as tea, meaning that it had pretty low amounts inherently. So when we're drinking a tea, we're getting all of those positive constituents out of it, we're just not getting the high amounts of positive constituents. However, when we take it in a concentrated form, such as in a supplement, it has a constituent called glycyrrhizin. Glycyrrhizin can increase cortisol for an unhealthy, if you're taking it for a long period of time, so an increase in cortisol to an unhealthy effect, and that subsequently ends up in raising blood pressure. So glycyrrhizin, we don't want to take glycyrrhizin for a long period of time. However, what happens if we need digestive support for a long period of time? And I want to qualify that. High levels of glycyrrhizin, not the amount of glycyrrhizin you'd get in tea, high levels like what you would get out of supplements. So something is created called deglycyrrhizinated licorice, also known as DGL. And actually, it's a very simple process. The deglycyrrhizination only is a water extraction process. So the vast body of research indicates that it must be mixed with saliva, which is why you see these in chewable forms a lot. When we take the glycyrrhizin out, now we have a licorice that's safe to use over a long period of time. And when we have it in a chewable form, it mixes with saliva, and that's where the greatest efficacy has shown. Now, we've had DGL on the market for a long time, for, at least since the late 90s, I believe. And they've been in these chalky, chewable tablets. Not all that much fun to take. Do they work? Absolutely, they work. People do experience relief from them, but they aren't that much fun to take because they're super chalky and usually not that great tasting. So Enzymedica has solved that compliance issue with creating a chewable gummy, a DGL gummy. So these are German chocolate flavor. They're not bitter. They're not chalky. Again, with the safest form of licorice for on long-term use. And something that I was really interested in when we were testing this product is making sure that some of the vital flavonoids were retained through the gummy manufacturing process, because it's those flavonoids that are really, really helpful for helping to normalize inflammation and that soothing capacity that DGL has. It can calm occasional heartburn as well. There has been study after study on this, and it does that by helping to normalize those inflammation levels and, again, soothing the tissue so that it can regenerate on its own. It's a standard dose of 400 milligrams of a 10-to-1 extract of DGL, just like what's in the other products. The difference is you have to take 2 gummies instead of 1 chalky, chewable. And the carriers for there are some nice, clean ingredients. Again, Enzymedica, with our mission of always bringing in the cleanest, finest quality ingredients. So quickly, which one do you choose? This is the number one question that I receive. Which one do you choose? So if we need to kind of separate this out, I use the Heartburn Soothe product for fastest acting. That's the one that's going to help you very, very quickly. And again, you can use this as needed. There is no rebound coming off of this. This isn't like the acid suppressing drugs. And then on the right, that Acid Soothe, it's a gentle protease-free formula that has the zinc carnosine in it for that GI tissue support. And it's got the soothing herbal blend. And I've just seen it work really well for the little bit of occasional stress heartburn over the years. We've got DGL, deglycyrrhizinated licorice, in a gummy form, which has been so studied to help to normalize that response to occasional heartburn, and again, supporting the inflammation levels in the GI. And the last but not least, betaine is for when we have low stomach acid. Now, the next question, can I take them together? Sure, you can take them all together except the betaine HCl, because you wouldn't want to keep stomach acid where it belongs with the alginic acid and then be giving yourself more betaine. So you can take the Heartburn Soothe, the Acid Soothe, and by the way, Acid Soothe also comes in a chewable tablet, and the DGL gummies if you needed to. You shouldn't need to, but there's nothing that is unsafe about doing so. Always, we want to get to the root of the matter. What is happening? We don't want to end up taking a supplement or a medication for any long period of time, although supplements are going to be on the safer side. But we want to get to the heart of the issue. So is it a food intolerance? Is it a medication? Is it an exercise that you're doing? Is it that one glass of wine that you're drinking after dinner is actually the culprit? It can be so many different things, and really it's important to get to the heart of what's going on. So just to recap here, stomach acid is a good thing. We need it for food breakdown, which means a healthier microbiome, more nutrient bioavailability, which is going to help with gut-brain connection and normal inflammation signaling. We need our stomach acid for the microbiome, and that many turn to allopathic remedies for comfort. They work very, very well when used properly over the short term, but they are often used, most regularly used, for too long, which presents some negative issues. And we do need more research in this area, but there are a lot of things that we do know and that have been proven. And that there are safe and effective natural solutions. Again, lifestyle is key. It's always number one, but supplementation can help with that fast relief and long-term support while you're figuring out what the issue may really be with the heartburn. So that's my presentation for today. Let's start to open it up to questions.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much, Julia. We do have questions rolling in, so keep them coming. With the time we have left, we'll get through as many as we can. Please post them into the Q&A box there. I'll be able to see them much better as the webinar chat box gets a little bit crowded. So just before we dive into the Q&A, to reiterate, as you're asking your questions, remember, for personal healthcare advice, you see your healthcare practitioner, and Julia actually has a great resource for that. If you're looking for a practitioner, we'll get that up in the chat for you. There it is. So if you're looking for a natural doctor, there you go. You can check that out. All right, some questions that came in. You mentioned some trigger foods, and somebody asked if they do have discomfort occasionally from acid, but they don't think it's from any of those kind of normal trigger foods. So what can you do to help identify what's really going on?
Well, those are the typical trigger foods. Those are the foods that we think of. But other trigger foods can be any kind of fruit or vegetable. Lettuce is strangely a trigger food for a lot of people. Apples are a trigger food. Sometimes things with high phenolic compounds like the berries and peaches. I have a friend who only gets heartburn from peaches. And so it may not be the typical thing. Also thinking about, is it something entirely different? I have a good friend who is a health guru, and he was like, I cannot figure this out. And he realized it was because of bench pressing, because he was bench pressing a few times a week and it was literally hitting him right here. It was causing the problems. So it can be lots of different things. Stress as well. Stress is real when we're talking about this. So I always go back to this. You'll hear me say it over and over again, is keep a food journal. Every time you have this kind of response, keep a journal of, was I stressed out that day? Did I have chocolate last night? Did I go swimming? Was it yoga? And then also those medications. So it can be so many different things. Now it can be a lot of other things on top of it. And that's where you want to really make sure and work with your doctor, your gastroenterologist, to just make sure it's not something that isn't lifestyle oriented, that it's not something more that's going on in the system.
Excellent. All right, we have a question about enzymes. What are some attributes of a good digestive enzyme?
Great question. So I always prefer to use what we call the vegan sources, and that means that they are fungal or bacterial source. They're in a fermentation process. And the reason is not just because they're not animal source, it's because they're actually they're far more active, I should say. They have far greater activity per gram than the pancreatic enzymes do. But there are also so many different varieties. I call them designer enzymes because you can have specialty enzymes for each different kind of protease and for different kinds of carbohydrates and things like that nature, a huge variety. So the attributes are, you want to look for a vegan source. You also want to make sure that when it's measured on the label in active units, not in milligrams. You want to make sure that it has a blend of protease, amylase, lipase, and cellulase. So you want protein digestion, carbohydrate digestion, fat, and fiber digestion. Just think about you want digestion for your whole plate of food. And then you want an enzyme that is going to work in different pH ranges throughout your digestive system. We've talked a lot about stomach acid today, but that does get neutralized as we go through the rest of the digestive system. We don't want an enzyme that's just going to work in one area. We want an enzyme that's going to be formulated to work in all areas of the digestive system, because that's where you get the true magic, where you get the nutrient bioavailability in the small intestine and the activity in the microbiome. And that's what Enzymedica's TheraBlend process is. But those are some main attributes of a quality digestive enzyme. And also in a capsule, no fillers, please. We don't need wax in our enzymes to hold the
No.
tablet together.
All right, we had several questions coming about licorice, so let's focus a little more deeply on that. One of the questions here is, does brand name make a difference when buying licorice root? They also asked about tea, which I think you kind of went over, um, but about brand name when you're buying it, and like, would something like licorice candy from Trader Joe's be anything helpful?
Unfortunately, there's actually not any licorice in most licorice candy anymore. And if it is, it's a natural extract. It doesn't have all of the constituents. It's a lot of anise these days. It used to be old-timey licorice, yeah, because licorice actually has a lot of natural sweetness to it. And that's how it was started to be used in candies. So let's go over a few different ways to take licorice. And the two uses for licorice. So there's two uses for licorice. One is the digestive use. And that's where if you wanted to take it in a tea, that's a very, very safe use because you're getting a low amount of that glycyrrhizin. It's soothing, it's helpful. You're not getting a really medicinal amount. Most amounts of licorice are you're looking at least 400 milligrams of extract on the DGL a few times a day. So you're not getting that out of a tea, but can it be soothing for a tummy? Sure. Throw it in there, some ginger, nice soothing drink. I actually really like the throat coat product, which I know it says for the throat, but it has a huge amount of licorice and slippery elm in there, and it's great for your tummy. So that's how you would take it in a tea for digestion. Then if you needed digestive support that was more meaningful, you needed that help with cellular regeneration and that inflammation modulation, then you would want to use the deglycyrrhizinated licorice. That glycyrrhizin being the constituent that can unhealthfully increase the cortisol levels and then subsequently heart palpitations, etc. So that's licorice for digestion on one side. Then there's licorice for adrenal function. And this is where you see licorice going into energy formulas, adrenal formulas, or you see licorice as a capsule on its own. This is not deglycyrrhizinated. It still has the glycyrrhizin in there because sometimes in life, if you're in adrenal exhaustion, you might need to boost the cortisol a little bit. So we all think of cortisol as a really bad thing, but at a certain point, you don't have enough cortisol sometimes. So for a very short-term period of time, it's safe to take for that adrenal support. So two different uses and two different preparations. Just think about for digestion, the tea, or for the deglycyrrhizinated, and for if you need energy, like go for an adrenal formula that maybe has a little bit of licorice in it. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I know we're at time, but we have a few more questions, and some you might be able to answer offline, follow up with people. But I want to ask this one more if people want to hang in there because there's two people who asked similar. But basically, is there a protocol, for somebody who wants to get off the over-the-counter medicine, or we were asked if there's a protocol to get off daily acid blockers, what recommendations?
So there's no formal protocol, and the reason is everyone's different. What I'm going to tell you is I've researched this a lot. I've taught classes for continuing education on this. And what you'll see if you go look online and possibly even talk with a naturopathic doctor is they will immediately put you onto the betaine. And that is to help to normalize and increase stomach acid because you've had a stomach acid suppression. That can work. It doesn't always work because you might be in that rebound effect. In fact, very often you're going to be in that rebound effect. And so what can happen is that you can use alginic acid to help with, as you are starting to move down in that use, you can use alginic acid to help to buffer along the way. I'm really, really, really encouraging people to work with a qualified healthcare practitioner because we need to find out exactly what's going on. And I will say too that it takes huge variables amount of time. I've worked with somebody, I mentioned the person that was on those acid suppressing drugs for 16 years and had a lot of other health issues. And I was like, oh man, this is going to take a year. And she called me in 2 months. She was completely off. It was almost effortless for her. And then I've worked with people that it has taken several months. So it really can take time. It's so individual. You also have to know what those underlying triggers are. Nothing's going to work if the underlying triggers are still there. But the reason that we put the link for naturopathic doctors in there is because naturopathic doctors too do tend to know a lot about digestion and can be a great support. And they can also give you the testing you may need if you're not satisfied with your gastro doc.
All right, that's an excellent point to leave it on. The additional questions that we're leaving on the table for time, we'll get those over to Julia. Again, this webinar will be available on demand. If you want to watch anything, you'll get a link to that after once we have that ready. And Julia, thank you so much. Thanks to Enzymedica for educating us, getting us up to date on this. And thank you to everyone for joining us.
Thank you.